Hello students, welcome to the answer writing program. So today we will be discussing 3 questions on government budgeting from GS3 economy. Let's take an overview of all the 3 questions. So the first question is related to fiscal consolidation. Second question is related to asset monetization. Third question is related to the issues with respect to the subsidies in India. So let's start with the very first question. Define fiscal consolidation and explain its importance for an emerging economy like India. So there are 2 demands of this question. First is about we need to define what is fiscal consolidation and we need to write down its importance. So these are 2 demands. So let's first understand what is fiscal consolidation. So fiscal consolidation is about the efforts to reduce the fiscal deficit. Now for that we need to understand what is fiscal deficit. So the fiscal deficit is when the government's earnings, or you can say the revenue, is less, or the expenses or the expenditure, you can say, is high. Then there is a net fiscal deficit. And when there are the high expenditure, means the government has to spend more into this economy, but the revenue is less. It means government has to borrow from outside. Borrow from the internal market, external market, etc. It means government has to take the debt. So this is fiscal deficit. Now what is fiscal consolidation? Fiscal consolidation is about reducing the fiscal deficit. How? Via reducing the wasteful expenses, increasing the revenue sources and reducing the debt. Reducing the public debt. So this is fiscal consolidation. Let's first understand what are the issues with respect to fiscal deficit. That is why we need fiscal consolidation. Then we'll see what is its importance. Okay. Now we understood that fiscal deficit, it means when the expenditures are high and the revenues are less. And for that we need to borrow from outside. It means the debt, and debt is also high because we are borrowing more to fulfill these high expenses. Got it? Now let's see what are the challenges with respect to high fiscal deficit. It means the very first thing is we are doing the more spendings in the economy. It means we are pumping more liquidity. Now let's see that we are putting more and more money into the economy, but the supply is same. Let's suppose two persons are there. They have 100 rupees in their hand and there is only 2 apples. So high demand is there, but the supply is still the same. So inflation will be high with respect to that. Now these 2 people with the having more money in their hands, they are demanding 2 apples. So there will be the inflation impacts. High inflation would be there in the economy. It means the first negative impact of the high fiscal deficit is high inflation. Got it? Next is about reducing the revenue. Means the revenue is less. It means people are not paying the taxes, or we can say the profits to the governments are less. They do not have much money. It means infrastructural development could be reduced. And when infrastructural expenditure, capital expenditure is reduced, it impacts the productivity of the economy, the employment opportunities of the economy, etc. Next is about high debt. It means government is borrowing more from the market. And when the government borrows more, it means the money for the private sector remains less in the economy, so that the private sector, what the private sector can borrow is less. And when the private sector like financial resources for the private sector is reduced, it means it results into the crowd out effect for the private sector. And what private sector does is, it increases the efficiency, it increases the productivity, it enhances the optimal utilization of the resources, it generates the employment opportunities for the people, it raises the demand in the economy. So all these things hampers. So these are some negative impacts of the high fiscal deficit. It means when there is a high fiscal deficit in the economy, it destabilizes the macroeconomic indicators. How? It fluctuates the inflation rates, it fluctuates the GDP growth because the crowd out of private sector is there, profits are not there, capital expenditure capital expenditure is less, infrastructural development is not there. So there are less exports, and when there is a less exports, the forex reserves will also hamper. So the current account deficit can be there. So these are some macroeconomic indicators that can be destabilized when there is a high fiscal deficit in the economy. Got that? Now, the first thing is this. Second thing is, when the macroeconomic stability indicators are not good in India or in any country, then the credit rating agencies will also give them bad ratings. So the output investments or like the FDI's inflows, that also hampers. So it means overall high fiscal deficit impacts the whole of the economic growth of the country. Got this point? So that is why to reduce the fiscal deficit, fiscal consolidation policy or the government is doing the efforts to reduce the fiscal deficit. So now let's understand few more concepts with respect to fiscal deficit. Now, where government is spending more and more, like expenditure is there in the subsidies, and from where government is earning its revenue, like from the taxes, from the non-taxes, and from the taxes is like how? Direct tax, indirect tax. Non-taxes is about like PSUs, dividend, disinvestments, and like land sales, etc., etc. So let's understand how we can reduce our fiscal deficit. If we reduce our expenditure with respect to the subsidies, it means if we do the rationalization of the subsidies, targeted subsidies, then we can reduce the wasteful expenses in this, so that we can reduce the fiscal deficit and achieve the fiscal consolidation. Next is about how we can improve our revenue basis. Then through this tax basis, we can do some structural reforms in this direct and indirect taxes. Also, we have come up with the GST, that is again the reforms to increase the revenue base so as to reduce the fiscal deficit. Next is about non-taxes basis. So we can enhance our PSU's capabilities so that they can reap more benefits or the dividends. Next is about the disinvestments. If we disinvest the loss-making PSUs and wherever the government does not have any business to do business, we can disinvest those PSUs. Like India is following the aggressive disinvestment policy. We have already seen 2 days back that what is the government's disinvestment strategy and how it is doing that aggressively. And second thing is about the land sales. With respect to this, like we are not exactly doing the sales of the land, but what we are doing the asset monetization. The next question is related to that only. So asset monetization is again in line with the fiscal consolidation. We'll see in the next particular question. So these are some other ways that how we can improve our revenue basis. Got that? So this is how these are the importance of the fiscal consolidation. So now let's move on to the main question. That in introduction, what you can write some data that India is still having the fiscal deficit of like say at the central level, it's 5.9, but FRBM target says that we need to reduce it to 3% of the GDP. So still there is a problem of the fiscal deficit. And with related to fiscal deficit, what are the issues we have seen? That there is a rising in inflation, fluctuation GDP growth, expanding debt. So that is why, because of these issues, we necessitate fiscal consolidation. So starting with the introduction, moving on to the body part. Why fiscal consolidation is required or important, we have already discussed. So as to stabilize the macroeconomic indicators, so that the whatever the debt we are taking, the public borrowing we are doing, that are sustainable. Again, we are not recklessly taking the debt out of the market. And we have already in the FRBM Act, it's there that the debt to GDP ratio should not cross more than 60%. 40% at the center, 20% at the state level combined. But it's like currently it's more than like 85% total. So we are 25% above this range. And also, according to FRBM, we need to reduce the fiscal deficit within the range of like 3% of the GDP, but still we are at the 5.9% at the center level. So we need to take the efficiencies or the methods to reduce the fiscal deficit so as to achieve the fiscal consolidation. Next is, we have already seen that we need to crowd in the private investment so as to boost the productivity, the innovation, to generate the employment opportunities in the economy. We require private investment, and to crowd in the private investment, we require fiscal consolidation. We do not need high fiscal deficit. Next is about enhanced credit worthiness. Again, when there are the macroeconomic stability in India, high credit rating agencies are there, which will give the high ratings to India as a country. Then high investments from outside also flows into the country. Next is about the long-term growth potential. Again, the same thing we have already discussed. So that for the sustainable growth, we need to reduce public debt, we need to reduce the expenditure, and we need to increase the revenue basis. Okay. Moving on to the dimensions, then how we can achieve the fiscal consolidation. The very first thing, the government has come up with the FRBM Act in 2003, like Fiscal Responsibility and the Budget Management Act. In this, again, the two targets, majorly there are multiple measures written over there in that act, but there are two major things, like we need to consolidate our debt to GDP ratio to 60%, but currently we are at approximately 85%. And second is about reducing the fiscal deficit to 3% of the GDP. Currently we are at 5.9% at the center level. So we need to take care of this. We need to consolidate our finances. Next is about public expenditure management. Again, where we are spending, where the government is spending, that should be very mindful. It should not be the reckless or the wasteful expenditure. We need to streamline the procurement processes, like whatever the government is procuring, it should not be the wasteful expenses. Next is about subsidy rationalization. We have already seen that it should, when we have to reduce our expenditure, the major portion goes to the subsidy as well. So we need to rationalize our subsidies. We need to be more target based. We need to be more data driven based subsidy to the people what we are giving. Next is about revenue mobilization through the tax reforms. Again, we have seen there are the two parts, tax, non-tax. Tax meant direct and indirect. We need to do the structural reforms in this tax reforms also, like pre-filed tax returns, GST implementation, and emphasis on e-PAN and e-TDS. Next is about how we can increase the revenue base through the non-taxes. We can disinvest, we can asset monetize, etc. And we can also include the public-private partnership. So strategic sale, lease and concession agreements, and national monetization pipeline is there, infrastructure investment trust and the real estate investment trust. So national monetization pipeline we'll see in the next question. So these are some ways how we can get, or what are the different dimensions of the fiscal consolidation. Okay. Moving on to the conclusion, what we can write? We can write what is the path ahead, where we can do more reforms for achieving fiscal consolidation. So yes, there are challenges, but again, Indian government is doing the reforms, and India, it will continue doing the reforms in the fiscal management, tax policies and asset monetization. That is very crucial for the stable economic health. So this is the conclusion. coming into the model answer, starting with the fiscal consolidation, the definition and how it is important. Then what are the various dimensions of the fiscal consolidation, finally ending up with the conclusion. Okay, moving on to the next question. So we need to discuss the concept of the asset monetization in India, focusing on its objective. So first we need to discuss about the concept of the asset monetization. Next is about we need to write down its objectives and we need to evaluate its utility for India. It means what are the positives, it can merge with objectives only, and what are the negatives. We need to write what are the challenges associated with the asset monetization. Okay. Now first let's understand what is asset monetization. Asset monetization. With the term itself we can understand we are monetizing the assets. Monetizing means making money out of that, generating revenue, exploiting the economic potential of that asset. What asset? That is already been built, that is the brownfield asset. It means we are not generating any new asset. We are already only monetizing what is already being built. So this is about we are unlocking the growth potential of underutilized or unutilized asset underlying in the country. Let's take an example that what is asset monetization. Let's suppose there is a road between Delhi and Agra. It's already being built like from past 50 years. It's there. Now what we are doing under this phenomena is we are giving this particular road to the private sector, let's suppose for 30 years. Now what we are dealing with the private sector or what we are contracting with the private sector is that, okay, you utilize this road for the 30 years, but give us some lump sum amount, let's suppose 10,000 crores at the initial stages only. So you take this road, you operate it, you maintain it, you levy the charges, like you put the tolls on that. On the side roads, you can build the malls, you can build the shops, you generate the revenue out of that. Whatever you want to do, you do it, but give us lump sum amount with respect to that particular road. So this is asset monetization, means generating money out of already being asset. Let's take another example of Delhi Metro. Delhi Metro is already being built. So what we can do, we can give one station or like 10 stations of the Delhi Metro to some private sector for like 50,000 crore for 30 years or like suppose 15 years. What we'll say, whatever the platforms are, you build your shops over there, you build anything whatever you want over there, you can put your hoardings, you do your marketing, you lease onto the whatever, give to the another parties of the various shops, buildings, etc. You generate revenue out of that, but give us at the initial stage 50,000 crore. So the government will have the excess money with them. They are just recycling that asset, whatever the asset were there with the government, it's already being built. It's already, the money is already being invested into generation of these assets. They are already there. But now we are recycling its value. It means we are giving it to the private sector. We are asking them to utilize, to operate, to maintain, to build, to do the capital expenditure over that infrastructure, but give us some amount right now. This is asset monetization. This can be done anywhere, like the already being asset what the government has, like with respect to airports, with respect to power transmission, with respect to the energy sector, anything. So government has come up with the multiple sectors where these projects are being identified for the asset monetization. Got it? So now this is monetization of the assets. Now what this is major aimed at, why we are doing the asset monetization? We are doing it with the objective that whatever we are earning from these particular assets, like monetization of these assets, whatever the Indian government is generating the money out of that, we will put into or pump into making new infrastructure. Got that? So already asset is there, we are generating new money out of that, and we are putting that new money into building some new asset. So this stimulates the economic growth. And two other ways we are generating the employment opportunities. How? It's already been built. It was underlying asset, unutilized, underutilized, whatever we can say. It was not generating revenue. So with asset monetization, first, it is generating revenue, the major thing. Government is utilizing this money into the new infrastructure, and when the new infrastructure is being built, we have yesterday in the yesterday discussion we have seen that when the new infrastructure is being built, new capital formation is there, we need some investments, and how it results into the increased demands, increased private sector participation, increased employment, increased exports, increased competitiveness, increased earnings, etc. And via increased saving, again increased investment. So this completes the virtuous cycle of the capital expenditure and the economic growth. So with this, we are boosting the economic growth. We are putting more money into the capital expenditure, first thing. And second thing, whatever we are giving it on the lease to the private sector, again private sector is doing the capital expenditure over that area, roads, transport, airports, power sector, etc. That private sector is again generating revenue. Private sector is also generating employment opportunities over there. So it's a win-win situation for the whole economy. Got that point? Next is about, this is a major concept of asset monetization. Now, what is the difference between the asset monetization and the privatization? In asset monetization, we are not transferring the ownership to the private sector. It's just about they are operating for the next 20, 30 years, whatever is there in the contract. We are not transferring the ownership or the management to the private sector. So this is not privatization, but yes, there are some issues or some opposing forces that says that this is the one way of privatization, because if we are giving the operational ownership for the next 30 years, it is the one type of privatization only. So yes, there are the concerns with regarding to the asset monetization with the privatization, but let's see in the future, like is it privatization or it's not. That is not our point of discussion right now, but yes, this will improve the economic growth. Got that point? Now let's come to the main answer. In the definition, we can write about what is asset monetization, and for that, yes, the government has come up with the national monetization pipeline. It means there is a pipeline. Pipeline means the virtual, we are saying that we have lined up the project that where we need to give the assets to monetize to the private sector. So we have identified those projects or those sectors. So that is the national monetization pipeline. And the money which will be generating out of this national monetization pipeline will put into the infrastructural development, and for that there is a national infrastructure pipeline is there. Again, one pipeline, we have identified the project that we need to pump money into these particular sectors or in these particular projects for the infrastructural development. Okay, so again you can write that this asset monetization or the increasing private sector participation, this has come up from the Vijay Kelkar recommendation on the fiscal consolidation. In the previous question also we have seen that fiscal consolidation is about reducing the fiscal deficit, and one way is to increase the revenue from the non-taxes base and from the land sales. So this is the Vijay Kelkar's committee recommendation only, that we need to increase the disinvestment, we need to increase the land sale, we need to increase the monetization from the assets. So you can also write about this committee's recommendation that yes, this origin has something to do with this commission. And you can quote some example also that 25 airports are proposed to leased out during the period from 2022 to 25 under the national monetization pipeline. Coming on to the objectives, like the first one is about investment gap. So whatever we were lacking of the investment to put for the generation of the capital formation, this asset monetization can fulfill that. Yesterday also we have seen that from the various sources investment can come for the capital expenditure or the capital formation. What are the resources or what are the sources for that investment? Household savings can be the one. India is dependent on the household savings. Bond market could be there, share market could be there, external commercial borrowings can be there, sovereign debts can be there, again green bonds, social development bonds, etc., etc. And also one is the asset monetization. Whatever we are generating the revenue from the monetization of the asset, we are pumping into the new infrastructural development. Okay. So yes, these channel the funds to bridge the investment. Next is about when the private sector comes in, it comes with its own expertise, specialization, etc. So when the private sector comes in, they boost the economic growth with its specialized or expertise, high potential for the optimal utilization of the resources. Then financial leverage, we are generating money, we are increasing return on already invested money, and we are putting into the new infrastructural development, and we are also reducing or optimizing our risk for the infrastructural development. Okay. Next is about the advantages of the asset monetization. Then the very first thing, we have already seen that we have come up with the new way to generate the revenue for the investment, for the capital expenditure. So national monetization pipeline aims to unlock 6 lakh crore for the period of 4 years. Then employment generation, when the new infrastructural development would be there, when the private sector comes in, so this generates or facilitates the job opportunities or the employment opportunities. Then next is the multiplier effect. As we have seen in the yesterday's discussion also, that the capital expenditure has the potential of the multiplier effect of 2.4 multiplier effect. Like if we put 100 rupees, it can create the effects of 245 rupees. So yes, via generating the money out of this asset monetization, we are doing the multiplier effect in the economy. Next is about increased efficiency, like new technology with the new private sector, new investment, new technological advancements with respect to the new investments, and capital formation. And capital formation can be human capital, technological capital, financial capital, economic capital, and the social capital also. So yes, when we invest more, there are the new technologies, advancements can happen, new innovations. Then we can focus on the core competencies of the government. When the government allows to, with this asset monetization, government is allowed to more and more focus on the policy making instead of just maintaining the road. That could go to the private sector, and government can involve itself in the planning, in the implementation, in the monitoring of all the processes. And this is the one example of the asset recycling. Whatever the asset we have already been there, we are just recycling, renewing it for generating the new money out of that already being built asset. Moving on to the challenges. Now, what are some challenges associated with this asset monetization? So, there are some common regulatory frameworks, or the way you can say there are some common issues with regarding to, like whenever there are the questions with respect to infrastructure, investment, capital expenditure, etc., there are some common issues like regulatory hurdles are there, cost runouts, time runouts are there. So in all these things you can write common issues like the regulatory hurdles. Like if we want to invest more and more money into the economy, if we want to do the investment for the, let's suppose road making. For road making, we need to acquire the land. We need to resolve the disputes. But again, what are the challenges with respect to that? Land acquisition is one challenge. Legal disputes is another challenge. So there are some regulatory or implementational issues are there. Next is monopoly concerns. Now, we are giving it on to the lease, or we can levy some charges or the fees from the private sector via some contract when we are monetizing our assets. But what are the concerns with regarding to that? That if we do it via the bidding process or whatever the process would be to monetize our assets if monopoly will happen in that particular domain. Like Adani only will take like 30 projects, let's suppose. So it will create some monopoly into that assets, and it can hamper the public trust, it can hamper the public welfare as well. For that, government has already signed or has already come up with the key performance indicator that this private sector has to follow that for the public welfare and for the public services delivery. But yes, there are the concerns with respect to that. Again, next is about the profit maximization. So if we are giving it to the private sector and private sector works on the profit margins only, so for that, to just gain maximum profit, maybe they will not put investment into the maintenance, that infrastructural development could not take place. So there are concerns with regarding to that. Then it impacts the customers, like via increasing rates for the toll tax. This can be the major concern, that when we are giving one road or one airport to the private sector for their maintenance, for whatever, for the new buildings, constructions, etc., they can charge more from the consumer. So this can hamper again the consumer base. Then substandard experience. From the investor's point of view, already in the past there are very bad experiences, like past attempts faced challenges, and because they were not giving the good returns for the investor also. Okay, moving on to the conclusion, we can write some way forward for that, because there are already concerns with respect to, like from the opposing forces, that there can be the privatization which is included in this particular asset monetization. So government should be more transparent so that the public trust would be generated into the government, so that we can easily do the monetization of assets. There should be more and more transparency to increase the efficiency or to reduce the regulatory hurdles into this asset monetization. Got that? So this is the conclusion with respect to the second question. Okay. Moving on to the model answer, starting with the definition, objective, advantages, challenges, and some way forward. Now moving on to the third question. As the government of India aims to bring down its fiscal deficit, its trade distorting subsidies in the several sectors need to be overhauled. In the light of this statement, you need to critically analyze the issues revolving around subsidies. So the question is about the various issues with respect to the subsidies. Okay, so for that you can write some positives of the subsidies followed by the challenges, and in the conclusion you can write some way forward in a brief. So starting with the introduction, you can write some data or the facts with respect to the subsidies, the status, that in budget 2024-25, government has reduced the subsidies by 7%. Means government is on the path of the fiscal consolidation. They are reducing the subsidies budget. They are rationalizing it. They are more targeted based. So reduce the leakages into this subsidies process, so as to get onto the path of the fiscal consolidation. In the last two questions, there were major, and everything is related to the fiscal consolidation only. So why we are reducing the subsidies, why we are monetizing our assets, why are we reducing the fiscal deficit? So everything is included into the fiscal consolidation. Okay. So yes, government is trying to reduce the subsidies also, wasteful subsidies wherever they are not required. So now it is amounting to 3.8 lakhs crore. Approximately subsidies amounts to 10% of the total revenue expenditure. So this is a very big portion for the budget or with respect to the expenditures. You can also write that yes, we are trying to reduce the subsidies, but still the fiscal deficit is as high as 5.9% of the GDP against the target of 3% that is being set by the FRBM Act. Okay. So we have seen that we need to reduce the fiscal deficit. For that, expenditure we need to reduce. For that, we need to reduce the subsidies. So this is the domain, and for that we need to reduce the fiscal deficit to attain the fiscal consolidation, or to consolidate our finances we need to reduce the fiscal deficit. Okay, and let's see what are the issues with respect to the subsidies. Like if we are giving subsidies to one sector or see like suppose one project, it means we are expending, we are doing the expenses in that sector more. It means government is not able to put tax on that project or sector, what we can say. So when we are giving subsidies to something or someone, it means from them taxes will not be generated, means the tax base will reduce, and that particular sector cannot, government cannot earn more and more profits also. So when the subsidies are high, taxes are low, profits for the governments are low. And again, to give the high subsidies, again we need to borrow more. Means the public debt is increased. Okay, so these are the issues with respect to the subsidies. We need to resolve these issues. Let's see in the answer. Starting with the body, that what are the rationale behind the subsidies? Why at the first place India is giving subsidies? India being the welfare state, in the DPSP also, like we have seen that in the 39A and B, these are the twin pillar of the socialism, that we need to prevent the concentration of wealth, we need to redistribute the resources in the economy. So India is a welfare state. We cannot just simply deny that we will not give the subsidies. We will give the subsidies, but yes, to the appropriate sector, to the appropriate people, wherever there is a necessity for the welfare, to provide them food, to provide them fuel, to prevent them from the brunt of the inflation, to alleviate the poverty, but not for the wasteful expenses, not for the populist policies, not for the vote bank policies. So we need to cut down the subsidies on that part, but yes, being the welfare state, India will provide subsidies in the future as well. So let's see what are the rationale behind the subsidies. We need to ensure the socialist principle. We need to provide for the welfare of the people. Like food, we are giving through PDS, National Food Security Act, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. Next is about in the healthcare, Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, and housing is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Next, why we are giving subsidies? For the poverty alleviation. Then agriculture welfare, support to the farmers so that with the losses they do not do the suicide, so as to raise their income, so as to take care from the brunt of the inflation. Like to supplement the farmer income, increasing agricultural productivity, enhance the food production, like PM Kisan scheme. Next is about we also give the subsidies to the various sectors like agriculture, food, fuel, fertilizers, renewable energy, exports, etc. So yes, we are giving to promote the domestic production so that they can be competitive in the foreign market. So it enhances the production as well as the GDP, like textile production subsidies under the Samarth scheme. Next is about to promote the exports, to face the competition of the global world, so as to increase the competitiveness. And when the exports would be increasing, it means the forex will come into India, forex reserves would increase. This fosters the exports, narrowing the current account deficit and stabilizes the balance of payment, like MES scheme. Next is about it controls the inflation when there is a high inflation via providing the subsidies to the poor people with respect to the fuel like kerosene, with respect to the LPG. At least they can withstand the inflationary prospects of the society, and they can consume the basic necessity things, essential goods in their lives, like LPG cylinder under the PEHEL scheme of Ujjwala Yojana. Then coming to the environmental protection, because India is transitioning towards the renewable sources of energy. So to promote that, to boost that sector, India is providing the environmental protection like e-vehicle under the FAME scheme and other major industrial policies as well towards the sustainably environment-friendly practices. Now, what are some issues revolving? As we have seen that increasing subsidies will result into increasing fiscal deficit. And for fiscal deficit, we have to borrow some money. Again, the debt would increase. It distorts the market economy. It creates the dual market. Some people will get rice and wheat at 2 rupees, 3 or 3 rupees, but some people at like 100 rupees or 80 rupees, etc. So, yes, it distorts the market economy. Then If we are spending more and more subsidies, government is left with less money for the capital expenditure, so that they compromise the intergenerational equality. Whatever the debt we are taking, we are spending it into just fulfilling the subsidies. These are the revenue expenditure. These are dissolved like in a way, and multiplier effect of the revenue expenditure is approximately 0.9 only, and we have seen the capital expenditure is about 2.4. So whatever we are spending, it is of no use. But yes, we have to do due to some we have to do the welfare and whatever the necessities are. But yes, we need to put more into the capital expenditure to increase the productivity, for more employment generation, and also as well as for the sustainable growth for the future, also for the future generation also. So yes, there are the low spendings on infrastructure. Next is about we are transferring the burden of these subsidies to the taxpayers. We are increasing the debt. First thing, when we will repay that debt, again we have to get from the budgetary resources only. We have to get from the public only. So why they have to face the brunt of these subsidies or of the high debt? Present generation also, or all the future generation also. Next is about inefficient agriculture subsidies. Like indirect subsidies amount to 2% of the GDPs, and during some RTI and during some surveys also, they have been seen that the MSP, the major portion is inefficient. Altered and yes, when we are giving non-target based subsidies like subsidies like MSP, if we are giving to the people, it hampers the productivity pattern or the production pattern also. Like we are more and more focusing on the rice and wheat. We are forgetting the millets. We are giving the subsidies like MSP on some products only. So farmers are also growing that crops only. So it changes, or it is hampering the cropping pattern. First thing. And second thing, via reckless use of subsidized fertilizers, subsidized electricity, subsidized water, they are depleting the soil also in the farmlands. So this results into the desertification also from the over exploitation of the natural resources. Next is about freebie culture in the election. This undermines the democracy also. Next is about, see, it's very easy to give the subsidies at the first hand. Everybody will be happy via getting the subsidies, but it's very difficult to dismantle it. This rabdi culture, it's very difficult when the government will say, okay, we'll not provide the subsidy. Again, there can be the political destabilization can happen in the democracy or in the country. So yes, there are the challenges with respect to that as well. Then finally, conclusion, in the way forward, what we can write: we need to review the existing subsidies. We need to rationalize the subsidies for the sustainable growth. For that, you can write some data. Then we need to be more targeted. We need to be more data driven. We can use artificial intelligence, machine learning to get the more data. We need to analyze the more and more data. That is how we can be more targeted based. Then we also can seek some alternatives for this subsidies like the universal basic income, so that it will give the freedom to the receptor also. Wherever they want to invest their money, they can do. Okay, so this was the conclusion or the way forward you can write. Let's see the model answer, starting with some data, the rationale behind and the issues revolving around the subsidies. Finally, some way forward. Okay, so that was it from my side. Thank you and have a nice day and keep writing.